Oh, Jesus, was my tripod all the way across the town here. Shit. Oh, shit. Hello. Sitting in the dark down here. One too many $700 a month electric bills. Sat in the dark for a month straight. It went down $20. God, these fucking bearings. There were so many. Probably about 600 I did today. We're gonna have 5,000 more to go. Joy. Get you plugged in. Do a little sighting in a little Amazon laser. Build a little silencer for a pellet rifle. Little suppressor. Shouldn't be too hard with pellets and BBs. The only thing is, you got to do the slower ones because a suppressor will not work at all if whatever's coming out of the barrel breaks the sound barrier, which a lot of pellet guns do. Most of them do. So no suppressor in the world's going to help it. As long as it's breaking the sound barrier, it's going to have a loud ass crack. So that's the first thing you got to do is go subsonic. Generally, like your bigger pellets, like your 22 caliber pellets, which are just normal, like BB gun round calibers. It's not like a 22 for firearm. It's just a pellet that's the same size as a 22, I imagine. And they're so much bigger, they don't break the sound barrier. Textbook, typical, everyday, run-of-the-mill, what they call 177, your classic pellet size caliber. And there's a multitude of others, but one of the next common ones is the 22 caliber. And that's all it is. That's what this is right here. It's just a little bit bigger. But it's big enough that it's not supersonic. So you can't actually suppress it. Yeah, not an option. The 177s, they're fucking cooking. Unless you got like a way to dial it down, such as a variable pump. Maybe you can put in a couple pumps, that would do it. But something like a brake barrel, forget about it. Those things friggin' scream almost as fast as a bullet. One day I was doing the dieseling of the pellets down here. I'm taking a little dab of any petroleum product whatsoever. It could be fucking Neosporin, Vicks, Vaseline, oil, grease. Put a tiny little dab of it in the cup of the pellet. When you fire it, it's like a firearm. It does what's called dieseling, just like a diesel engine. It has so much compression, it combusts itself, and it was pretty cool. It was real loud, real powerful. Carrying up other targets with it. It's fun. To do it again. These days, super loud though, a little smoky. The dogs eating. Oh, sitting. Nice. fucking big on camera. It's far, far smaller than that. When you look through it, it's just like a pin dot. Do I leave it on and kill the battery every single time? Yeah, I do. Rechargeable one. Oh, okay.
Oh my God.
Fucking eyes are covered in Oakwood after a Vegas buffet. Diana Chaser. Perfect setup for suppressor. Pretty flooded.
Go to your pellet rifles.
Not flooded immediately. These hotels have a lot of calibers now. Oh, it's like 50 caliber. see where it's hitting first. Must have a bad extension cord. When I bump it, it shuts off the Wi-Fi.
Some even saw 100. breaking news, detailed analysis, in-depth interviews, and explainers. Follow the Times Media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like our videos and hit the bell icon to stay updated with the latest.
Here's a video of a woman using a Wi-Fi detector to discover the hidden camera in what appears to be her Airbnb. And we are following breaking news out of the Middle East right now. Rocket sirens have been sounding across northern Israel as the Hezbollah terror group has launched explosive drones targeting Israeli communities. What you're looking at right here is some of the video just coming in from Israel's official social media pages. I do want to take you out, though, to this live image that we do have showing the Israel-Lebanon border. Now, all of this comes as Hezbollah has said it will now target civilians deep within Israel following last week's assassinations of Hezbollah's second-in-command in Beirut and Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Israel has claimed the responsibility for the Beirut killing, but not the one in Tehran. However, Iran has blamed Israel and promises a severe punishment. I do want to break down all of the details here, so let's bring in Alex Trayman, the CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief at the Jewish and Civic Inn. As always, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you so much, Josh, for having me.
All right, so all of this is developing there in northern Israel. We do know that we've seen Hezbollah attacks there that have taken place really just about on a daily basis since back on October 7th. My question for you, what do we know about this current attack?
Well, Hezbollah has launched a barrage of drones at northern Israel. It's still pretty close to the border, but one of these drones exploded in a village and caused 5 people to be injured by shrapnel, one pretty severely, and several other with moderate injuries.
And we have seen these different attacks that have come in from Hezbollah over the last several months. Does this one differ from some of what we have seen? Because we know that Hezbollah said that it will now target civilians after the death of Haniyeh. So has anything changed?
But I think what's changed has been the success of their attacks. I mean, they've been pummeling Israel nonstop with drones, with anti-tank guided missiles, with Katyusha rockets and others. Israel has evacuated over 80,000 of its residents from communities that are near the border, specifically so that these attacks will not kill civilians. We saw one of the attacks that today hit a home that would have been populated and Israel not evacuated those communities. So we see now that these two strikes, this drone strike that's now injured 5, one severely, and also the attack a week ago that killed 12 people in Mashal Shams, Jewish residents. It's not that they have fired more or changed their pattern, but rather that, unfortunately, 2 of their strikes have been very successful.
And I do want to talk to you about a New York Times report that came out that says that Iranian officials have confirmed that Russia has actually started to deliver advanced air defense and radar equipment to Iran. Why is that of note to not just Israel, but also the U.S.?
Well, I think that those in the U.S. that have seen the aggression of Russia against Ukraine, they should understand that Iran is providing drones to Russia that they've used in their attacks against the Ukraine, and now we see that Russia is providing weapon defense systems to Iran. So we're seeing a bit of an axis forming, and I think that that's important. This isn't just an isolated group like Hamas attacking Israel or an isolated group like Hezbollah attacking Israel. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis are all Iranian proxy groups, and it's clear now that Iran is also working with the Russians.
Iran put out a statement and essentially said that it does want to punish Israel for the death of Haniyeh, though it is important to note that Israel has not claimed responsibility for that attack. But they said they want to punish Israel, however, they don't want the situation to escalate there in the Middle East into an all-out war involving Iran, possibly involving the U.S. What does that say about the severity of a possible incoming attack from Iran?
Well, we're hearing that Iran definitely wants to attack. It could be a coordinated strike between Hezbollah to Israel's north, firing deeper into civilian population centers, as you mentioned earlier, together with Iranian-launched strikes. And remember, back in April, they fired 300 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles at Israel. Now, clearly, deterrence has not been restored there because they feel that they can now strike again. And a lot of intelligence reports suggesting that this attack could be more intensive than the April 13th attack, which was pretty serious in its own right. But ultimately, we don't know what Iran is going to do. Israelis are waiting anxiously, trying to figure out if and when Iran is going to attack. It could be a matter of hours, it could be a matter of days, and then to see what Israel's response might be, or even whether Israel could take a preemptive strike ahead of an Iranian attack.
And on that note, I do want to ask, what is day-to-day life right now like over in Israel as folks there are just kind of waiting to see what happens?
Yeah, it's amazing in Israel. The people are at work today. It's summertime. Kids are not in school. Israel's a country with many kids. Kids are out. Until we get definitive word from the Home Front Command that people need to get into their bunkers, people are going to be out and about. But there is a tremendous anxiety, a national anxiety ahead of what we feel could not only be just a singular event of attacks like we saw on April 13th, but something at this point that could really spill out into a severe multi-front conflict.
I want to talk about another report here, because after months of Israel saying that UNRWA employees were involved in the October 7th attack, the United Nations now says that at least 9 of them do appear to have been involved. What should the world take away from that piece of information? Because again, Israel has been saying now for months that these UNRWA employees were involved. The UN pretty much denied it, but now says that that does appear to be the case.
Well, they only have proof that 9 participated in the attack. That doesn't mean that it was only 9. There's good reason to believe that it could be many more than 9. Not only that, the UNRWA facilities inside Gaza, have been used as weapon storage facilities. Rockets have been fired from UNRWA facilities. UNRWA is the largest employer in Gaza, and remember that the government in Gaza is Hamas. So the main takeaway really is that UNRWA and Hamas are a singular entity that are working together to perpetuate a supposed refugee crisis for generation after generation in order to delegitimize the Jewish state.
Another topic of note here, we do know from the Israel Defense Forces that apparently a tunnel, a large tunnel, was located over at the Gaza-Egypt border, and it appears that it's large enough for a vehicle to actually drive through. What does that say to you, as there has been concern, of course, about whether the different hostages that have been held since October 7th could be transported over to Egypt?
Well, Egypt was very insistent that they did not want Israel to go into this Philadelphia corridor, which is on the border between Egypt and Gaza, and did not want Israel to go into the southernmost city of Gaza, Rafah, which abuts the Philadelphia corridor. The United States was also putting tremendous pressure on Israel not to go into Rafah. They said they couldn't do it. Israel, of course, not only proved them wrong, accomplishing their military goals without taking out many collateral civilian casualties, but they found hostages, they uncovered weapons, and they uncovered vast tunnel network, including this latest tunnel discovered, which go across the border into Egypt. This last tunnel that you mentioned came directly under an Egyptian military post. So it's obvious that the Egyptians knew that there was this tunnel network that was extending into its territory, and these tunnels have been used to smuggle vast amounts of weapons into Gaza. Could have been used to smuggle terrorists in, could also have been used to smuggle terrorists out, and could have been used to smuggle hostages out as well.
All right, Alex Trayman, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break down all the latest developments there. Is there anything you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, I think that the idea that Iran supposes that it can attack Israel and calls it a retaliation for the strike against Taniyah, in Tehran, is a major disappointment. Israel and the United States have the capacity to put a military option on the table that would create a tremendous amount of deterrence. But when the United States is telling the public, we don't know if Iran is going to attack, we're hoping that Iran won't attack to the extent that it would cause a major regional escalation, or that Israel wouldn't respond in order to set up a major regional escalation. What they're basically saying is that there's no deterrence. What the United States should be saying is that if Iran will lift a finger and attack Israel, that they will cause severe consequences for that attack. And that is the only thing that you can do to restore deterrence. And even if they don't want to present their own deterrence, then they have to make it clear that they support Israel's right to respond in the fullest amount of force possible, because only the fear of a major Israeli reprisal is going to cause the Iranians to pause before launching an attack on the Jewish state.
Alex Trayman there with the Jewish News Syndicate.
Welcome back. It's 12:15. The U.S. is preparing to defend Israel and itself from a potentially massive attack by Iran. Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq was attacked by an Iranian proxy group on Monday. Trey East has the latest.
As the fighting grinds on in Gaza, U.S. forces in the Mideast are bracing for more possible attacks by Iranian proxy groups, a day after Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq was hit with a suspected rocket attack, injuring an unknown number of American military personnel. The Pentagon sending additional naval assets and a squadron of F-22 fighter jets to the region, hoping to defend against attacks that could come from proxy groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, or even Iran itself.
Iran's being very, very methodical about this. And I hope that if Iran attacks, we'll have what happened in April, which is 300 out of 300 missiles and drones shot down.
Tensions have been climbing since Israel killed Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, which now include hints that American military targets could be on the table because they believe Washington gave the green light to the Israelis.
We believe that had it not been for the U.S. government's assistance, Israel would have never taken such a risk.
Most experts agree any response from Iran would be limited and proportional, but with so many proxy groups operating in the region, it could be difficult to keep the fighting contained.
Both parties concerned are going to want to try to do this in such a way that it doesn't escalate completely out of control, but that doesn't mean that they will be able to do that.
Tensions continue to escalate along Israel's northern border. Today, at least 2 people were injured during a Hezbollah drone attack. The Israelis continue to strike southern Lebanon. And Haifa, Trey Yates, Fox 30, Chicago.
Let's turn our attention now to northern Israel, where there's been a series of drones launched from southern Lebanon. They struck several areas, triggering air raid sirens. Explosions were heard in the coastal city of Nahariya. At least 17 people have been injured. The Israeli army says it intercepted at least 1 rocket. Now, Hezbollah has issued a statement claiming responsibility, saying, in response to the attack and assassination carried out by the Israeli enemy in the town of Abba, the Islamic resistance fighters launched an air attack with a squadron of drones targeting the headquarters of the Golani Brigade and the headquarters of the Eagles units in occupied Akka, and accurately hit their targets and achieved confirmed casualties. Zain Basravi is standing by for us in Amman. We'll get the latest from here in a moment. First, though, let's go to Asad Bey, who's in Marjaoun in southern Lebanon. And Asad, what does this strike suggest about Hezbollah's ability to attack northern Israel?
Well, it suggests a number of things. One is that Hezbollah has the intelligence, the locations of Israeli military facilities and installations, that they're able to strike them, but also that they're able to get through layers of Israeli defenses. Now, in the past, we have seen a barrage of Hezbollah rockets being intercepted, but sometimes it's believed by some that what Hezbollah tends to do is test the Israeli air defenses and try to figure out where those locations are. But this is significant because that location in northern Israel is roughly 20 kilometers away from the Lebanese southern border here. So it's slightly deeper than Hezbollah would usually strike. Again, that's significant as Israel anticipates this Hezbollah retaliation. But Israel has struck southern Lebanon today. They've hit the town of Nefadun, which is roughly 8 kilometers from the border, in an apparent airstrike. Now, the authorities say 5 people were killed that attack. Now, what's significant about that attack, possibly significant, is that there are reports that Amin Badruddin was killed. Now, he's the nephew of former top Hezbollah commander Mustafa Badruddin, who was killed in an attack in 2016 in Syria. Now, we're still waiting for confirmation, but Israel has also attacked a town called Odessa, which is not far from where I am here. 1 person was killed, and also another strike on the town of Qiyam, which is less than a kilometer away from me, right behind me. 1 person was injured. Now, what we understand from Hezbollah statements and attacks today are that this isn't a part of the main retaliation that Hezbollah has promised in response to the killing of their senior commander, Fuad Shukr. Now, the General Secretary of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, is expected to speak later today, roughly about an hour from now. And as the world and the region awaits for this promised Hezbollah retaliation. Now, the Lebanese Foreign Minister, Mustafa Bouhabib, has said that Lebanon is working to ensure the response to the Israeli killing of top Hezbollah commander does not lead or trigger a war in the Middle East. Now, that's a real fear here, not just in Lebanon, but the entire region.
All right, thank you very much. Asad Bey reporting to us from Marjaoun in southern Lebanon. The Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting from Israel, so Zain Basravi joins us instead from Jordan's capital, Amman. What might be the significance then of Hezbollah being able to accurately hit strategically important sites in northern Israel?
Well, it's significant because Hezbollah is able to maintain a consistent and incredibly challenging pressure campaign by way of these strikes on northern Israel. And to that point, just in the last 30 or 40 minutes, really in the last hour, we've seen yet another series of sirens going off in at least 30 towns in northern Israel. Reports of sirens going off in other parts of northern Israel as well. Drones flying overhead. Some reports that one drone did explode, whether it was shot down by Israeli missiles or not, whether any of those sirens resulted in more Hezbollah ground strikes on Israel, that is still unclear. But what is clear is that Hezbollah is able to penetrate quickly and deeper into Israel, and the Israeli Iron Dome, once thought impenetrable, is simply not functioning as Israelis would like it to. To that end, Israeli forces have confirmed that reports, and I'm quoting from their social media channel here, reports of a fallen hostile aircraft on Route 4, an area south of Nahariya. This is one of the major explosions that took place on northern Israel today. An initial inquiry indicates that it was an interceptor missile that hit its target and hit the ground, injuring several civilians, and the Israeli military is investigating what ended up being its own missile landing on its own territory, injuring so many people. So, at the same time as Hezbollah is able to show that it is able to carry out more sophisticated, more probing attacks on northern Israel, Israel's own defense systems don't seem to be working as they would like it to.
Okay, thank you very much. Seamus Rabi reporting to us from Amman in Jordan. Let's speak now to Amir Oren, who's a columnist for Haaretz, a newspaper focusing on military and government affairs. He's normally based in Tel Aviv, but today he's joining us from New York. Thank you for speaking to us on the Al Jazeera News Hour. So what do you make of what do you make then of the target of Hezbollah's strike in northern Israel?
Well, as you know, for the last 300-odd days, Hezbollah has been operating under two contradictory vectors. On the one hand, it wants to help Hamas and to join the fight and divert attention and forces that Israel has from Gaza to the Lebanese border, and therefore it shared in what it sees as the joint resistance fight against Israel. But on the other hand, it behooves you not to go to influence Israel into a full-scale war, because then Iran, its patron, will lose its Hezbollah arm. Obviously, should Israel invade Lebanon or hit it with its full might, Hezbollah will be shattered, and the reserves which Iran has been positioning north of Israel for the day when it has nuclear weapons will no longer be there. So it's a very delicate game that Nasrallah has been playing. He is playing with equations. If Israel hits a certain target, he will try to hit a parallel target in Israel. If Israel hits a military commander in Hezbollah, he is trying to find the right person to retaliate against, but again, short of a full-scale war.
You say short of a full-scale war, but the suggestion is that we have not seen yet the collective response that has been anticipated following the assassination of Fouad Shukr and Ismail Haniyeh. So that is expected to be a collective response. I suppose, what are Israel's options now if its security situation continues to deteriorate?
Well, you know, long before we had SMS and WhatsApp and what have you, we used to talk about telegraphing our functions. No one apparently uses telegraph anymore, but this is what Iran and Hezbollah have been doing for the last 8 days. Since July the 30th, they've been talking about retaliation, so that means that there is no surprise attack in the offing, and therefore no need for Israel to preempt. And Israel seen a real move towards pulling the trigger, as it may. Israel would have pulled its own trigger first. It seems all very choreographed in order for a response to be taken, perhaps for domestic reasons primarily, but not to be so severe as to escalate into a
So the Israeli government is waiting to see the timing and the scope of the Iranian response before choosing how it will counterattack.
and to see how its own defense array has been able to deal with these attacks. And as we saw in the Mount Jayoun attack a couple of weeks ago, Saturday last week, if it so happens that a single rocket penetrates the defense and kills 12 boys and girls, Israel had no other recourse but to respond. But had this particular rocket been intercepted and no one would have been injured, we wouldn't have seen this escalation. So it all depends on the impact, the damage, the injuries, and only then can you analyze the consequences.
Amir Omar, thank you very much for joining us from New York.
Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe to our channel, typically. The Mossad's feats have inspired movies, books, and TV shows. They've assassinated terrorists, rescued hostages, and hunted Nazis. Some lived deep undercover for years. Others have donned outrageous costumes while behind enemy lines. But most blend into the shadows. They could be anyone, they could be anywhere, and you won't know they were there until long after they're gone. But how do they get close to terrorist masterminds? Easy. They just have to be smarter than them, which means they have to use strategies no one can see coming. Here are 4 of the Mossad's wildest stories. Since its very first day as a state, Israel has been dealing with, shall we say, unfriendly neighbors. And thanks to a generous donor, those neighbors have gotten pretty sophisticated over the past few decades, which means that the Mossad has had to get very creative. Ever heard the expression fish rots from the head? Well, I don't know if that's true of fish specifically, but it's a good summary of the Mossad's strategy. In this analogy, the fish is a terrorist, which gets its orders from the higher-ups, the fish's head. So the best way to disable a group is to pick off its leaders. But how do you do that? Well, you can go to war, which is bloody and expensive. Or you can use a small, highly trained force that targets leaders and only leaders in order to minimize any civilian casualties.
Fake passports, elaborate disguises, and a very real assassination of a top commander of the Palestinian organization Hamas.
But you don't get to the top of a terrorist organization if you don't have at least a few brain cells. Smart terrorists are always looking over their shoulders. They don't trust anybody outside of their tight inner circle, so they're hard to spy on. They don't use social media or disposable phones, so they're hard to watch remotely. They might not even sleep in the same bed. How can a secret agent from an enemy country pick a guy like that? Well, here are 4 different ways. 1972 was a big year for the Nazis. The Danes were returning to Germany for the first time since 1936. Last time around, Jews hadn't been allowed to compete. But nearly 40 years later, the Jewish state was sending 15 swimmers, wrestlers, shooters, fencers, sailors, and even one walker. In fact, the walker was a Holocaust survivor who escaped death in the Ghetto when Palestinian terrorists murdered 11 Israeli athletes.
They now said that there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
Israel didn't take kindly to this attack. The Mossad launched Operation Wrath of God to track down everyone who had been involved. Their big raid came in October of 1972, when the Lebanese source passed on the exact locations of the PLO offices, command posts, and weapons workshops in Beirut. But the most exciting reveal was the home addresses of 4 PLO big shots, including the guy who had helped plan the massacre. Not that the information made the task easier. The Mossad had to figure out how to sneak elite combat into an enemy city, blow up a bunch of PLO offices, and kill 4 of the PLO's top brass in their homes, all without hurting civilians or getting caught. Thanks. So they called him the commander of Israel's most elite special force, who would one day become prime minister. His plan was simple. A force of 15 men would split up, take down all the targets at the same time, and then detail them. Oh, and half the guys would be wearing makeup and heels. Yep, you heard that right. In 1970s Beirut, muscular hairy dudes usually didn't travel on a path at 11 p.m. But in the so-called Paris of the Middle East, a bunch of couples going out to a party barely merited a second glance. They'd prepped for months. Then, on a spring night of 1973, Israel's most elite commanders made their way to the front, decked out in cutest outfits. Lebanon was an enemy state, so none of the guys had ever been there before. But thanks to their excellent intelligence, they were able to find their targets quickly. The payload targets were dead minutes. It all seemed to be going smoothly until a strange bullet hit a car horn and woke up the entire street. But the Lebanese police, who I assume thought they were responding to a robbery, were no match for the command units. The firefight was over quickly, and all the commandos made it back to the building in time. Things weren't going as well on the other side of town. 3 commandos were shot as soon as they responded approaching the building headquarters. But their commander refused to abandon the mission. The remaining soldiers attached explosives to the building, and they all rushed back to the airport. From their rubber boat, they watched the building collapse, setting up a massive column of smoke. They later learned that 35 members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine were inside. The PFLP was behind multiple hijackings, bombings, and murders, including massacres of 17 tourists. The next day, the entire government of Lebanon tendered its resignation. Meanwhile, Arab states across the region grappled with their new reality. Israel was dead serious about justice. And the Jewish state is ready anything at any time. But not every mission requires an elite strike force of defense outfits. Sometimes to catch a killer, you gotta be a little more subtle. And that means that you need an unorthodox approach. Which brings us to the fashion of 1977 may have been goofy as hell, but the situation in Israel was dead serious. Israelis were up to years of terrorism. Some of the worst attacks came from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Yep, same clowns from our previous story. Mossad had taken down 35 members in 1973, but they kept their eye on the prize. Co-founder, Rabbi Haddad, who had been expelled from his own organization for being too radical. Haddad was a doctor who had chosen to devote his life to hurting people rather than to healing. He moonlighted as an agent, taking care of soaked defectors and other people that were in life. But his real love was masterminding terror attacks against Israelis. The more intense, the better. But Haddad was not the anti-Israel. One, he lived deep into enemy territory in Beirut, and his wife and kids never seemed to leave his side. The few times they weren't around, Haddad got insanely lucky, surviving a bombing and an RPG to his window. So a team of Israeli scientists developed a slow-acting, untraceable poison that would take months to actually eliminate. The best way to get it to build up in his body? Put it in his toothpaste. One of Haddad's henchmen, maybe his women, was secretly working for Mossad. To this day, all we know about this double agent is their code, Sadness. Part super spy, part frontman for Evil Man. All Sadness had to do was replace Haddad's toothpaste with an identical tube with the poison for his job. Haddad must have kept his teeth sparkled. For months, he lost weight, then hair, then blood. But no doctor could explain why.
I think there were cognitive factors at play here.
What do you mean? His team even reached out to the East German secret police, the Stasi, for help. No luck. Haddad died in an East German hospital at the age of 49. The official story was that he died of cancer, but behind the scenes, his colleagues and doctors were sure he was poisoned. They just had no way to prove it. This was a low-signature assassination, which meant that it was hard to trace or prove. But not every design operation is correct, which brings us to another explosive mission. Remember the early days of cell phones? Maybe. But back in the 90s, few people thought about the fact that with the right technology, anyone could trace or tap your phone. Yahya Yashu wasn't there. The young Hamas commander was a brilliant electrical engineer who had once dreamed of earning a master's abroad. Instead, he joined Hamas, using his expertise to construct suicide bombs that murdered 90 Israelis and wounded countless more. There was no question about it. The engineer had to go. But Ayash was crafty, switching up both his phone and his bed constantly. He didn't seem to have a social life, alright? He was paranoid as all get out, so it was impossible to sneak an agent into his inner circle. Until the Mossad learned that he spent a lot of time with his childhood friend. Every time he visited, he'd use his friend's phone to chat with associates, by which I mean fellow Hamas guys and their friends in Iran. Ayash's friend was loyal to a fault. The friend's uncle? Turned out he could provide with a nice benefits package that included a new life in the United States. All he had to do was give Ayash a tiny new cell phone. Mossad told him there was a transmitter inside for phone tapping purposes, but that was a lie. They didn't need to listen to Ayash's heart-to-hearts with his dad. They needed to get rid of him. So they placed a tiny bomb inside the phone, which was guaranteed to kill Ayash without hurting anyone else in the house. It worked. As soon as the voice recognition expert gave the go-ahead, Mossad detonated the phone. The line went dead. So was the man who had murdered so many Israelis. It was another successful mission, though perhaps one that should have come much quicker, before Ayash hurt so many lives. This was a relatively old-school operation. A poison, a dressing. The next attempt would be anything but old school. But even the most technologically advanced operation would go wrong.
There were two explosions within 10 seconds of each other.
This moment must be the end of this bloody pursuit.
It's hard to believe that these news broadcasts came just 2 years after Israelis and Palestinians signed peace accords. Through it all, Hamas did their best to tank the whole peace thing, unleashing a wave of terror that killed scores of Israelis. The Israelis were tired. They just elected a new prime minister who had promised to keep them safe.
As Prime Minister, it's my responsibility to do everything in my power to fight this terrorist evil.
Netanyahu knew had to deliver a significant blow to Hamas's infrastructure. Mossad chose Khalid Mashal, deputy head of the Hamas political. They lived in Amman, but though Jordan and Israel were technically at peace, the kingdom would not appreciate an Israeli hit on Jordanian soil. The operation had to be swift, silent, and above suspicion. Mashal had to look like he died of natural causes. So the Mossad turned, once again, to their team of scientists who suggested level fentanyl to make the job. Yes, that fentanyl. But here's the really good thing. Instead of just sticking a needle in his arm and running away, the Mossad would use an ultrasound device to administer the poison. Don't ask me how that works, because I don't understand this level of magic.
What sorcery is this?
But apparently, all the guy would feel was a puff of air and something kind of wet. When he turned around to yell at whoever to spray him, all he'd see was 2 bubbling tourists holding an exploded can of soda. Apologizing. Sounds genius, right? And it might be, if the agents were completely prepared. They weren't. Their cover stories were and they hadn't practiced for every scenario, like, for example, what to do if Michelle's daughter was with him. See, every morning Michelle got into a car with his kids. First, he gets dropped off at work. And by work, I mean the HQ of a terrorist organization where he planned the best ways to murder him. Then, the driver would take the kids to school. Mossad knew the kids would be in the car when Michelle got dropped off. What they didn't bargain on was his daughter running out of the car to give her dad one last hug. The driver jumped out of the car to chase her, which put him in the perfect position to see a guy standing behind his boss with his arms raised. Of course, the driver had no idea that the agent was wearing an ultrasound device filled with poison. I mean, that's not exactly the first thought I would have when I would see someone suspicious. He thought the guy had a knife, so he shouted, "Khalid!" Khalid turned around. The agent panicked and sprayed him in the ear. Khalid looked at the agents. The agents looked at him. And then they ran like hell. They didn't even get to do their trick with the soda, which apparently they practiced constantly, annoying everyone around. But things got even worse when another Hamas operative happened to see the agents sprinting down the street. They could have just knocked him out and ran away. But instead, they beat the living daylights out of him, giving another Palestinian operative time to walk by and march them straight to a local police station, where they pretended to be Canadian tourists. But they couldn't fool the Canadian council. The jig was up. Hamas had already put out a statement saying that Israel and Jordan were in bed together, and the country's 2 million Palestinians would not be happy if they learned that the king just let the Israelis go. If he wanted to hold on to his crown, he'd have no choice but to publicly rescue the 2 agents. Plus, the other 6 accomplices holed up to the embassy. So now Israel had a choice. Really crappy choice. They could let Michelle die, knowing they could condemn 8 Mossad agents to horrible public death, or they could hand over the antidote really soon. They chose to look stupid. Michelle lived. All the agents came home safely, and so did hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. But Israel was forced to release a way to say, oops, sorry. As of 2024, by now, Michelle is still alive and well. Yeah, it was a major bummer. Even legend mistakes. But the most successful missions are the ones you never hear about. The ones that get declassified after 50 years and sound stranger than fiction. I'm not a betting guy, But I'm willing to put money on the fact that over the next few years, Israeli secret agents are going to go on some pretty wild missions. After all, the Israeli government has vowed to take down every single person who planned the attack on October 7th. And I have no doubt that they mean every word.
This program contains graphic imagery which may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hamas unleashes a shocking assault on Israel, leaving hundreds dead.
The barbarism and the savagery, stunning.
Hamas taking hostages.
Israel responding, saying Hamas will bear the consequences of the attack.
It was 11 days after Hamas's attack on Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister, was at Ben Gurion Airport to meet the American president.
You could see that he was lost. He was lost. He understand that this is huge tragedy for Israel, but also for him as part of Israel's history.
Bibi Netanyahu has always prided himself on being Mr. Security. So for the worst day ever, for the most severe suffering of fatalities and casualties in Israel itself, for this to occur on his watch, it is a tragedy.
He is now descending the stairs.
President Biden come downstairs from Air Force One on tarmac, and he heads straight for Netanyahu, and he wraps his arms around him.
It was an expression of America's solidarity with Israel, but it also carried a warning.
It's called a bear hug, but in Hebrew, a bear hug can mean wrapping your arms around somebody in order to restrain them as much as to comfort them. And that captured, I think, the dual goals of this trip, right? Hug, yes, you're with them, but caution at the same time. Be careful.
This is an extreme, delicate journey now.
Israel had just begun its retaliation against Hamas. Later that day, Biden and Secretary of State Antony Blinken took the unprecedented step of joining Netanyahu's war cabinet to discuss their plans on the escalating civilian toll in Gaza.
The fact that State Secretary Blinken and President Biden insist on sitting inside the Israeli war cabinet, which never happened in the history of the relations between the two countries. This is the clearest example. They just don't trust them. They want to be there and make sure that things are not getting out of control.
After 9/11, we were raised in the United States. While we sought justice and got justice, we also made mistakes.
It was a warning to Netanyahu and to the Israeli people, don't make the mistake that we Americans made after 9/11, which was to overreact, to do what our enemies wanted us to do, and to unleash a military conflict that causes us all sorts of additional problems.
2 months later, Gaza is in ruins.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to push back against international calls for a ceasefire.
The problem is that no one knows what will need to happen for Israelis to feel satisfied that they've achieved their stated objective of having destroyed Hamas.
Gaza has become a graveyard for children.
Thousands of Palestinians are dead.
And so all that's left is to just keep killing and bombing and killing and bombing until when?
Prioritize the hostages rather than with Hamas still holding hostages. Netanyahu has pushed ahead.
From the Israeli perspective, what matters right now is what happened October 7th. And there's less and less talk about what will happen in Gaza, about the consequences, about the world's criticism.
And now, tensions are mounting between the Israeli Prime Minister and the American President, both hugged in solidarity.
Hugging Netanyahu turns out to be a very risky strategy. There are many people who look at the situation and say, well, what has this bear hug got us? The U.S. is pressing Israel to shift to precise targeting of Hamas leaders rather than widespread bombing and
For
roundup.
Benjamin Netanyahu, this moment of crisis is the culmination of a 30-year conflict. Over a failed peace process he has long resisted. Over American pressure to come to terms with the Palestinians. And over the security of his country that he vowed to defend.
With all of this death and destruction, it's hard not to look back and say, where did the, road turn? When did it become inevitable that we would head to this cataclysmic conflict? The second guessing is haunting.
Historic and honorable compromise.
30 years ago, a hopeful moment in the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians.
It's a day for optimism.
Two sworn enemies arrived at the White House to sign a peace agreement.
It was brought in by the president.
Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, a former general representing Israel.
Now agreed to lay down their guns.
Representing the Palestinians, Yasser Arafat, the chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization.
This is a historic breakthrough between Israel and the PLO, two nation movements competing for the same space, and for the first time we're prepared to recognize each other.
Known as the Oslo Accords, supported by President Bill Clinton, it was designed to end years of violence by laying out a peace process, a deal that could give Palestinians their own state and land captured by Israel in the 1967 Arab-Israeli War.
President Clinton said this was ready.
It charts a course toward reconciliation between two peoples who have both known the bitterness of exile.
On the White House lawn, the tensions were visible.
To the last minute, there were issues. Rabin is insisting that Arafat can't come to the thing that looks like a uniform. We're telling Arafat, no, you can't come with a, you don't bring a weapon. You go with a pistol, you can bring a weapon to the White House. Then at a point, the president looks at Rabin and he says, you're going to have to shake his hand. And Rabin looked like someone had punched him in his stomach. And he stood there. This is a man he considered a terrorist all his life.
And then the handshake. An image that would become iconic.
These hands that shook knew nothing but the shoot, the trigger, the bullets, the bombs, the fight. And that question to me is, can this hand shake into the culture from the minds of Palestinians and Israelis? That coexistence is possible, that peace is possible. To live and live.
Eat something. I should get dizzy. So much coffee in me. I'll be back though.